If you're looking for a compact, lightweight, and versatile zoom lens for your Sony full-frame cameras without necessarily having to break the bank, look no further than the Tamron 20-40mm F2.8. In my honest opinion, it's one of the most underrated zoom lenses on the market right now. It's a perfect combination for compact mirrorless cameras like the Sony a7C II and the Sony a7CR. I bought this because I was looking for a more compact and wider focal length zoom lens than my Tamron 20-75mm F2.8 G2. As usual, I'm going to share with you 5 reasons why you should consider the Tamron 20-40mm F2.8 and some things that you also need to keep in mind before getting one. With that said, let's get into it. As always, honest disclaimer, this video is not sponsored or paid. I bought this using my own money from Tamron Philippines, so everything that I'll share in this video is based on my honest opinion and experience. With that out of the way, the first reason why you should consider the Tamron 20-40mm F2.8 is its compact and lightweight design. The Tamron 20-40mm F2.8 is one of the smallest and lightest zoom lenses out on the market right now, weighing only around 381.3 grams. And as you can tell, it is significantly smaller and lighter than the Tamron 20-75mm F2.8 G2, which weighs around 552 grams. But the build quality is essentially the same. It's also virtually the same height as the Sony 24-50 F2.8G, which by the way, I'm also going to review soon and probably compare the two. So make sure to subscribe if you're into that. The Tamron 20-40mm F2.8 is also lighter than the Sony 24-50 F2.8G, which weighs around 438.9 grams. So yeah, among these 3 zoom lenses that I have in the studio, the Tamron 20-40mm is the lightest. All of them, by the way, feature 67mm filter thread. And for some kicks and giggles, the Tamron 20-40mm is also roughly the same size as the Meiki 50mm f1.8 prime lens, and surprisingly the same weight as well at around 381 grams. Now, does size and weight matter? Well, it depends on your personal preference. For me, it does, and is one of the main criteria for choosing a lens. I chose the compact Sony a7 II for a reason, so it's only fitting that I partner it with a compact lens. Now, the second reason why I should consider the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8 is its underrated focal length. I mean, who wouldn't want a wider 20mm focal length on a compact and lightweight zoom lens, right? The focal length of 20-40mm is almost perfect for travel photography, especially partnered with its compact and lightweight characteristics. The 20mm focal length is perfect for landscapes and sceneries, while the 40mm is just enough for some environmental portraits, and if you partner it with mirrorless cameras with high megapixel counts like the Sony a7C II and Sony a7CR, you can also take advantage of the Super 35 mode, which will give you an extra 1.5x zoom. That's up to 60mm for the Tamron 20-40mm. Of course, you won't get the real compression of a 60mm lens, but at least you can get your desired focal length and framing on camera. If you want a better focal length while having a similar compact size, you can also consider the Sony 24-50 f2.8G, but is significantly more expensive, like almost double the price. So the value of the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8 for what it offers in terms of size, weight, and focal length is really compelling. Now, the third reason why you should consider the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8 is its outstanding image quality, especially considering the price. Before I share with you some sample shots and my real-world experience with this lens, let's get the boring but equally important technical stuff out of the way first. But if you just want real-world sample photos, you can skip to this mark to save time. Now, the reason why these test charts are important is because this is where you can see where the lens is the sharpest in terms of focal lengths and aperture settings. Alright, so in terms of distortion, at 40mm f2.8, as you can tell, we have a noticeable pincushion distortion. And if we enable the profile correction, this is how it looks. Alright, so it's actually quite significant. And then let's go to different f-stops so that you can have an idea about the vignetting. So f2.8, f4.0, f5.6, f8.0, 10, 11, 16, and 22. Now let's move on to 35mm. As you can tell, the pincushion distortion has been improved quite a bit, and this is how it looks when corrected. There you go. And then different f-stops: f2.8, 4.0, 5.6, 8.0, 10, 11, 16, and 22. Now moving on to 24mm. As you can tell, we now have a slight barrel distortion compared to the 35mm, as you can see here. And enabling the profile correction, this is how it looks. Alright, and different f-stops, f2.8, 4.0, 5.6, 8.0, 10, 11, 16, and 22. Alright, so moving on to the widest focal length, which is 20mm, we still have barrel distortion and enabling the profile correction. There you go. It's actually quite significant in terms of barrel distortion with a lot of vignetting as well. So f-stops, f2.8, f4.0, 5.6, f8.0, 10, 11, 16, and 22. There you go. Now, in terms of sharpness, let's start with center sharpness first. 20mm f2.8. So as you can tell, it's already quite sharp. f4.0, we have a significant improvement here. 5.6, 8.0, f10, and then of course, as expected, from f10 to f11, we have a slight diffraction, but just a tad bit of difference there. And then going to f16, this is where we can see a significant difference or significant diffraction effect here. And of course, the same can be said at f22. Now let's move on to f24, f2.8, f4.0, 5.6, f8.0, f10, and f11. Same diffraction effect all the way to f16 and f22. Now moving on to 35mm at 2.8, 4.0, 5.6, 8.0, f10, f11, same diffraction, f16, and of course f18. So as you can tell, the jump from f10 to f22 is quite massive in terms of the softness or the diffraction effect. Now moving on to 40mm, our last focal length here, f2.8. As you can tell, it's quite soft at 40mm f2.8 compared to the 20mm 2.8. So f4, but moving on from f2.8 to f4.0, we have a massive improvement here. Then 5.6, 8.0, f10, f11, f16, and f22. As expected, time and time again, from f10 to f22, there's a massive diffraction effect right there. Now let's check the corner sharpness, starting again with 20mm f2.8, f4.0, slight improvement, f5.6, slight improvement as well, but it is still quite soft, f8.0, f10, f11, f16, and f22. Now moving on to 24mm, as you can tell, f2.8, 4.0, 5.6. So as you can tell, the trend here, it improves at around 5.6. Then we have 8.0, f10, f11, f16, and f22. Now moving on to 35mm, quite soft at 2.8 wide open, improve quite a bit at 4.0, 5.6, f8.0, f10, f11, f16, and f22. As you can tell, corner sharpness is not the best characteristic of this lens. Now moving on to 40mm, f2.8, f4.0, 5.6, 8.0, f10, f11, f16, and f22. There you go. So as you can tell, from 20 to 40mm, corner sharpness is really not the best for this particular zoom lens compared to other zoom lens that I've tried before. Honestly, for me, it's not a deal breaker because what's important for me is the center sharpness, especially if you consider the price. I'm really happy with the images I'm getting using the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8, both for photography when I'm traveling and for videography when I'm doing YouTube videos. Granted, it's not the best when it comes to corner sharpness, but in real-world performance, like I said, it's really not a deal breaker for me. As you can see from the sample shots, the image quality when partnered with the Sony a7C II camera is really decent, and most of its optical imperfections like distortion and vignetting can easily be fixed using the available lens profile. The 20mm focal length is really perfect for traveling, and it's really an underrated focal length for any zoom lens, especially when indoors. You can go forward for some extra reach, but more often than not, you won't be able to step further backwards for a wider shot. The 40mm is arguably short for portrait shots, but like I said, you can take advantage of the Super 35 mode to reach up to 60mm focal length in return for some lost pixels and the lack of compression compared to a true 50 or 60mm lens. In my honest opinion, the perfect focal length for a zoom lens would be 20 to 70mm, but it's going to be massive, especially if it's a constant wide f2.8 aperture. Now, chromatic aberration is basically non-existent. If there's any, it's barely noticeable. It features almost perfect bokeh balls with no onion rings or halo and no cat's eye either on corners, which is nice. In the real world, the bokeh is pleasantly decent. It's not as creamy as you would expect from a wide f1.8 aperture lens, but at least it's not too busy either. Lens flares are also quite minimal, super small, and not too distracting and noticeable. Longitudinal chromatic aberration is also well controlled both at 20mm and 40mm. And this is how the sun stars look at 40mm f22. Overall, I'm fairly satisfied with the image quality of the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8. Now, the fourth reason why you should consider the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8 is its overall build construction, design, and autofocus performance. The build quality and design of the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8 is on par with any modern Tamron lenses, featuring their second generation design. The zoom ring rotates only up to 65 degrees for fast manual focusing experience. The zoom and focus rings protrude a little bit from the sculpted body, making it easier to grab the rings for precise adjustments. And the overall feel of the plastic construction really speaks quality compared to other third-party lenses while still maintaining a relatively lightweight form factor. Honestly, while lenses made out of metal provide better build construction, I'm not a fan of the extra weight that comes with it. So having a lightweight lens while still having enough durability is really a good option. As for the autofocus performance, it's fast enough for my preference. As you can tell, it's smooth and accurate as well. Eye tracking is pretty decent and for the most part, can keep up with the sudden and fast movements of the subject. It's also pretty quiet, which means you can definitely use this for vlogging and on-camera recordings. Lastly, the fifth reason why you should consider the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8 is of course the price. For the price of around 44,990 Philippine pesos, you'll be hard-pressed to find a better lens with a similar focal length of 20-40mm with the same compact and lightweight characteristics. The closest you can get to this is the Sony 24-50mm f2.8G, which is priced at around 69,990, which is way more expensive. By the way, let me know in the comments below if you want to see a comparison video about these two lenses. Now, those are the 5 main reasons why you should consider the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8. But as always, let me also share with you some other things worth considering before getting one. The Tamron 20-40mm f2.8 features a 67mm filter thread, which is constant for most modern Tamron lenses. It also has a rubber gasket for moisture resistance, features fluorine coating for water and oil resistance, and has a USB Type-C port for firmware update. However, it doesn't have any button or switch, which is kind of a bummer. A single customizable button could have been better here. As for the zoom ring, it starts at 40mm and extends just a bit for the wide 20mm focal length. And I'm actually impressed by that compared to the longer barrel extension of the Sony 24mm f2.8G. And lastly, and this is the main reason why I decided to get the Sony 24-50mm f2.8G, is the focal length. As I pointed out earlier, the 20-40mm focal length is almost perfect for travel photography, and it really is, especially the wide-end 20mm focal length. It's super convenient for shooting landscape shots. However, based on my experience using both the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8 and the Meiki 50mm 1.8 on our trip to Singapore last November, I found myself looking for that longer 50mm focal length, especially for close-up portrait shots and discreet street photography. As you can tell from my sample shots, most of the portrait shots are either full or half-body shots. And yes, I also mentioned that you can get up to 60mm using the Super 35 mode, but again, you won't get that real compression from a true 50 or 60mm lens. At the end of the day, it will all boil down to your shooting style, preference, and of course your budget. If you value the wider 20mm focal length more than the 50mm, then the Tamron 20-40mm is a very compelling option. Otherwise, you might want to save up for the Sony 24-50mm for a more standard zoom lens focal length and better image quality and autofocus performance. And there you have it, guys. Thank you for watching. Again, this video is not sponsored or paid, and I bought this lens directly from Tamron Philippines. I'll put some links below if you're interested. Now, if you're looking for one of the best macro lenses for your Sony mirrorless camera, make sure to watch my review of the new Tamron 90mm f2.8 macro lens by clicking this. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you appreciate this video, and see you next time. Have a great day, guys. You're awesome.